is that when you become a Christian, when you take and follow Christ, it's not for the glory of you, but it's for the glory of Him. Man, it blew my mind. Like, I did this whole dare to be different, and I know y'all have heard this saying a lot of times, so that's why I had to add dare to be different in a world full of copycats. Because when I saw in Romans 12, it says dare to be different. One of the translations, I was like, oh, son, that's dope. Like it said, dare to be different. Don't conform to the things of this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Don't be a copycat. Don't do what everybody else is doing, but be transformed so that you can know the acceptable will of God, so you can know, hey, God, this is what you had in mind for me. Man, I'm telling you, the moment that God really dealt with me, I ran from my call for so long in ministry. I'm like, you know what? God, I done made so many mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm young. Like, where we gonna go with this? But the joy that I have now to be able to be used by God surpasses any 9 to 5 that I've had in the past. The joy and the peace that, hey, I walked from a $30,000 full-time benefit job to pursue purpose, to pursue ministry full-time, that although I may not have the Jordans, although I may not have the name brand clothes, although when you look at my social media, I may not have the followers, but at the end of the day, I have a peace that surpasses that because it's purpose. When daring to be different, I had a student come tell me one time, it's like, that's such a cliche saying, because when you dare to be different, you wind up being like somebody else. Then I realized I had to correct him because I said, hold up. Dare to be different. I'm not encouraging you to make sure you have the latest shoes or the latest hairstyle. I'm not telling you to make sure that you're doing the in thing. But dare to be different means that I'm pursuing purpose rather than positions. Fulfilling purpose instead of positions. And so, never forget, man, there was this one time I wanted to take a bath. But I really wanted to take a bath, like really bad. And some of you are like, hey, are you crazy? Is everything okay? Like, why did you want to take a bath? I moved to Lancaster County. Who thinks it's like country right now, right here? Like where we are. Like, did you get scared when you was coming down the trail to get here? Did you question it? Like, Jesus, are you going to meet me at the end of here? Or please be offense? Like, I know why I'm coming down here like, Mr. Ashby, where in the world have you brought me to? So where I lived was this all day. And we moved, man. I never forget, it was this huge bridge we had to cross. And it looks like Darth Vader at nighttime. And it has like these 2 red lights. So it's almost like getting sucked into this time warp. And it's don't do that again. And so here I'm going, and like majority of my life I had to move. I always had to move. Like when I would get in a house and I finally felt like it was home, I had to move. And so I thought that this finally was gonna be it. For the older ones, like I felt like the Jeffersons, like I had moved up to the east side. Like we was like doing this shit because we finally found a home. And when you looked at the house, it was a glimpse of perfection on the outside. It was like this 2-story house, and you know, it had the fence around, and the dream home. But when you looked on the inside, it was bare. There was no running water. There was no septic. My days of holding up the bathroom from my brothers was confined to the 4 walls of a porta potty. And so for me, just having that home, I was happy. And so here, I wound up taking and having to go to the local church to fill up a gallon trash can every day, just so I could flush the toilet, just so I could eat, just so I could take a bath. And so here, for like a 7-year-old, like that's a lot to overtake. But for me, that day of me wanting to take a bath was so much bigger than just the obvious of you being able to take a shower or a bath every day. And so I never forget, my mom took the pots and she filled them up with water. She put them on the stove, and when the temperature got just right, she walked up these stairs and she poured it into this green tub. She kept the process going. She would take a pot off, she would go up the stairs and then pour into. A lot of times we find ourselves quitting because of the process. when we're walking with Christ, it requires us to say no to stuff that everybody else is doing because we're not committed to the process. We could miss out on the end result because that night I got to take a bath because my mother was determined that at any cost her baby was going to take a bath. And that's the same way that we got to be in life. We got to be so determined to get this thing right with God that we can say, no, I'm not going to take and commit to these things. No, I'm not going to conform to the things of the world. No, I'm not going to do what man says that I have to do to be accepted. But I'm going to do what it is that God has called me to because the end result is far greater than the temporary process. And so then I actually that. And so here I realized that, hey, you go through stuff in life. I will never take it away from a young person. Most adults will say, oh, you young, you don't have no problems, you don't have no headaches, you don't even have nerves. Who's ever heard it? We all have nerves, okay? We're humans. And here, the things that I endured in my childhood has ultimately become the platform that I'm able to stand on because of my testimony. And so when daring to be different, you have got to understand that you were created on purpose for a purpose. Purpose far greater than yourself. That, hey, God had you on his mind that when he created you, when he was forming you, he said, yeah, man, he's going to be this tall. Yeah, he's going to have these ears. Yeah, he's going to take and have this frame. And he took his time with you. So to know, man, like, you had me on your mind before my mama was even finished. Like, you took the time that every hair on your head, God can account for. Created on purpose for a purpose. I forget, I was 9 years old, and I had this kite. Who's ever seen them little plastic kites at Walmart? Had never flown a kite before. So I put it together. I'm like, kite, you're going to fly today. What's one thing that you need in order for a kite to fly? Okay, this kind of looked like it does outside today. But I was determined to make this kite fly. So I got kite, got my bike. It's like I'm gonna make one. So I'm on that bike, I'm pedaling. Kite, still going. Oh, that's it, falling. Y'all don't like that joke either? Don't do that one. So flying. So I was like, forget it. I'm gonna take this kite and it's gonna fly. So I got in this big open field and I'm like running with the thing. I'm chucking boy. When you want something bad enough, even if you gotta look foolish, like you be doing it. So I'm like running, man. And the kite is like dead. And all of a sudden, boom! Right side of my body gave out. I hit the ground. Knew my heart was still beating, but I was not moving. Taking and all of a sudden feeling like everything in me had shut down. My mom, she comes out on the porch. Nicole, get up off that wet ground. Get up off that wet ground. I'm on the ground, and that's the only thing she can say to me. Sometimes, moms. She won't hum. So all of a sudden it registered to her and she came and she ran over. And she, Randy, what's wrong? They had to call 911. I remember being on the ambulance. I remember them trying to stick the tube down. I remember going in and out. And I remember my last words being, I can't breathe. To wake up at King's Doors, hooked up to tubes. The thing I didn't like about that, I flew on a helicopter. Who's flown on a helicopter in here? Who remembers it? Not me, right? I was so upset. And so here, one of the most joyous moments for my life, I don't even remember it because they weren't having to put me on life support. And when I really came to, and when I finally came to realize what was going on, I had a diagnosis of complex partial seizures, which affected the right hemisphere of my brain. So it was like here, I'm 9 years old, here, I'm trying to go through the motions of life, and I started to have seizures. I was on medicine that made me feel like I had a heart attack. I was on medicine that made my hair fall out. Go to wash my hair and I'm pulling out hair. I was on medicine that made me gain weight to the point that I didn't even recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. I was on medicine that made me depressed. I was the guy upstairs. We got to talk. I say, here, I'm supposed to believe in you. Here, faith is that which I can't see, but I believe because of your power. So here, it's time for me to get outside of me. It's time for me to start walking on faith. So I started flushing my pills. I didn't tell my mom we would go to the doctor. The doctor would be like, your blood doses are off. I'm like, well, stop. I don't do. And so eventually, I had to tell the truth. So the doctor told me, he was like, look, I completely support you. He said, but you better not ever think about drinking. You better not ever think about doing drugs. You better not ever think about smoking or doing anything, because at the drop of a hat, that could be the end of your life. That's how serious sin has got to become to us. That grace is that which has kept us thus far. But we've got to take and start operating in faith and understanding we were created on purpose for a purpose far greater than ourselves. Secondly, you have got to find something worth living for. So for me, even when I was a little I went to college like I was supposed to. Graduated 2 times, still working on it. Got married like I was supposed to. 2 years ago. But I found myself going through the motions. Found myself just existing and not living. Found myself taking every day that I had for granted. Reason why she's so important, why I'm making a must that she's everywhere I am, because I realize my responsibility to her. Building a legacy worth following. I'm not going to wait for somebody on social media half naked to become her role model. I'm not going to wait for her to have to go look for acceptance from everybody else because of not getting it from me. I saw my future for the first time I looked in her eyes. Sidebar, this does not mean go have babies. That's just my blessing right now. But y'all sitting in here, y'all got siblings. That should be the reason why y'all are living. Y'all got parents that although y'all are the kids and it may not be fair, y'all can build the example. Y'all can build the legacy. Y'all can show them how they can be. You got classmates that you can be leading by example. But more importantly, your thing to live for should be all about God, because here, Christ sacrificed everything. He died the death that we should have and lived the life that we couldn't, just to show us the possibilities are there. But we have got to find that thing worth living for. At the end of the day, taking and getting likes can't be compared to the gratification of God's grace to allow us to wake up